Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. The Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Bringing you the latest from the world of daily fantasy sports and gambling, so you can stop Googling how to join a squid game to cover all those parlays you thought were such a sure thing. Now, sit back and listen to one of the sharpest minds in the game. Here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Okay, guys, just getting into the NBA Finals real quick. I'll also talk about the NHL Conference Finals briefly. But Warriors hosting the Celtics. Obviously, the Warriors are favorites. It's a minus 150 spread. And if you're the public, I think people are looking at this as a slam dunk series for the Warriors, whereas Vegas and myself were looking at this and saying, yeah, Warriors should be favored, but the Celtics have the wing defenders to give the Warriors fits. And the factors that I look at in this series kind of comes down to, can Jason Tatum get his shot off pretty much at will, or can Andrew Wiggins actually impact him to slow him down so that he's not averaging 28 a game? I honestly think that Jason Tatum's going to go off again in this series, because if the Heat couldn't slow down Jason Tatum, the Warriors are not going to slow down Jason Tatum. And what the Celtics can do in this series that Memphis was able to do and Dallas could not do because of the personnel, they can pound the Warriors on the inside. Al Horford, while he's not a dominant post scorer, is still as effective, if not better, than Steven Adams in the post. So I think Al Horford could get his buckets in the paint, and I definitely think Robert Williams, as long as he can stay healthy enough to give the Celtics 24 to 28 minutes a game, I definitely think Robert Williams is an important X factor in this series, because the Warriors do not have any size on the interior to stop the points in the paint from the Celtics if they try to play that game. So I think the Celtics can play some bully ball. I do think Jason Tatum can get a shot off. The question becomes, can Steph and the crew hit enough three-pointers just to keep outscoring? Because I think that's the Warriors' really only path to victory in this one. If I were betting this series odds, I would go more on the Celtics side at plus 130. Now, is that where I'm going? Not necessarily. But if you look at a Celtics 4-2 series victory odds-wise, you get 370 in the current markets I'm seeing, and a Celtics in 7 route is plus 650. I think this is going to be an extended series regardless of who wins. So to me, even if you take the Warriors side, if you take the Warriors in 6, it's plus 550. If you take the Warriors in 7, it's plus 310. You see what I'm saying? It's that, the predictions of getting the series score right, I think, are more valuable than even trying to bet the outright, because I just think the series goes deep. So to me, from my perspective, I think the series goes 6 regardless, 6 or 7 regardless. So you may as well just bet the odds of 6 games or more on both sides if you want to go about it that way, and you can still come out with a decent enough profit doing it that way. I just don't see a short series out of this. To me, I think it would take some injuries for this series to end early, and matchup wise, I just don't think that's necessarily in the cards for either squad. So I think they'll have their games where they get their shots off, and they'll have games where they're doing well. But if I'm looking at this from just a pure basketball standpoint, the Celtics pose enough problems for the Warriors that, much like the Memphis series, they're going to be chasing their tails at certain points, because they're going to get bodied on the interior. That's just the way it shapes up, in my opinion, barring any further injury issues. Now, on the Warriors side, it looks as though Gary Payton II is coming back from that elbow injury he suffered in the Memphis series. The reason why I bring that up is Peyton. They use Peyton for his defense, and what the Celtics were able to get away with against the Heat, mainly because uh, Miami was just too banged up on the point of attack at the guard position. Because both Lowry was a complete shell of himself, but also you had issues with Gabe Vincent being injured. Tyler Hero obviously injured his groin. Like the Heat were just losing guys in the backcourt left and right. But with Peyton coming back for the Warriors, if he plays game 1 or he comes back for game 2, regardless, they're going to be able to use him on Marcus Smart. And what has emerged as an X factor for the Celtics is Derek White. Derek White was instrumental in winning that Heat series. But I think, having Gary Payton back, they're going to use him as an irritant to disrupt that Celtics backcourt to make sure that they can get the Celtics out of rhythm, because we all know Steph Curry, while he is an amazing shooter, he cannot guard to save his life. So Steph is always going to be a liability out there, and the Warriors always try to mask that. But I expect the Celtics to take advantage of Steph, and they'll use Marcus Smart, and they'll use Derek White to their advantage when Steph's out there. So the Warriors are going to switch it up and throw out Gary Payton Jr. when he gets the all clear to go. They're going to use him for the 15-20 minutes, just purely defensive reasons, while they give Steph a blow or allow him to rest a bit more on defense. That's the way I see this playing out in terms of squad depth, because, there's real questions about Otto Porter's foot, how long he can hold up, because you saw him leave multiple games already in this playoff run for the Warriors where, he really couldn't go into Dallas series, although they didn't really need him in Dallas series. They kind of need him for this series against the Celtics, and I'm not sure if he can go. Like, that's where I gotta say the injuries start balancing out on both sides, because you still got Robert Williams as a big question mark in the interior. The guys that I do not like in this series would be Kevon Looney. I know people were big on playing Kevon Looney in DFS in the series throughout. I do not see Kevon Looney being even remotely effective with Robert Williams in the mix, and even with Horford, Looney, I cannot see him doing anything of note in this series. So to me, Looney's almost a fade in most cases, unless, depending on the site, pricing wise, it works out. But I am significantly under projecting Looney from where I've had him pegged throughout the Dallas series, just because it was obvious the Dallas front court just did not have the physicality to match up with Looney. Boston definitely does. So that to me, that's a negative matchup for the Warriors this round. So that's the way I would look at it in the interim. I mean, for game 1 tonight, because there's a Millie Maker on DraftKings, basically where I'm kind of looking at this, just being spitballing here, because it's early morning. It's very early Thursday morning as I record this, but realistically, I would say I'm playing Jason Tatum and Steph Curry. I'm playing Horford. I may or may not play Robert Williams tonight. I'm still trying to make the decision. I'm, being on the safe side, I could just play Draymond because the Warriors are at home. But we'll see about it. It's like that's the question mark. And then the other area is, does Gary Payton II get the call up to play? If he's clear to play, I'm playing him because he's guaranteed minutes, and he's more likely to be seeing significant minutes than Jordan. Yes, I know Jordan Poole's been shooting the ball well, and he's that additional score for the Warriors, but realistically, they're gonna need Gary Payton more. And again, I don't trust Otto Porter being healthy enough. That's another reason why I think Payton, even though he's clearing the elbow injury, they may want to run him out a bit longer, because we don't know if Porter's foot is going to be able to hold up. So while it's an elbow injury, it's not like he was a scorer to begin with. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like as long as he can rebound and do some of the other things, that's really all you're looking for around a Gary Payton second. He's not going to be a scorer anyway, and his salary is 1,600 on DraftKings in the utility spot. That's pretty much just a punt play, but I think it's valuable considering I think he's getting more playing time than some of these other plays in that salary area. So uh, those are my thoughts initially. Uh, on the NHL side, we've got a shootout going on between Edmonton and Colorado as expected. I still expect the Avs to win in this series, just from the standpoint of they're still a deeper squad, and Edmonton does not have the game to translate to winning shootouts against Colorado. I don't know what Calgary was doing trying to get into shootouts with Edmonton. That is not their game. But Edmonton got the series win over Calgary, and now, uh, you know, I just think this is the end of the line for Edmonton in terms of the Oilers. As good as McDavid is, as good as Draisaitl is, I just don't see them winning shootouts against Colorado. I think this series is over probably in 5. But, it is what it is. On the Rangers side, the Rangers got a big Game 1 win over Tampa last night, but this was the game that they needed to jump on Tampa. Tampa was rusty. They didn't practice. They practiced, but didn't play live contact for 9 days. It's a classic letdown spot because of how rusty you get without real in-game action. Tampa looked it. The Rangers took advantage. That's exactly what they needed to do. Get some confidence going. Get some goals past Vasilevsky. I feel more confident now in saying that the Rangers get this to 6 games. I still think Tampa wins just because I know how deep Tampa is in terms of the roster, and when they play sharp and play their style hockey, I don't think the Rangers have quite enough, but the Rangers have made this series interesting enough from the dynamic of now that the kid line's going and they're taking advantage of some of the older players on Tampa Bay wearing down a bit as the playoffs wear on. I think that the Rangers have a viable shot to win the series. But as I said in my NHL preview, when I predicted the Lightning versus the Rangers in the conference finals, which not many people did, I got laughed at by quite a few of you who called me out for being a homer, saying I had the Rangers in the conference finals. I still think the Rangers give Tampa trouble. That's just the truth of the matter. I think the Rangers have been consistently undervalued because of what they do on special teams, but also the fact that Vasilevsky is the is the second best goalie in the league. That's just that's what I've said all along. So I don't go crazy over how all this is unfolding. I just look at it from the standpoint of we kind of see just in terms of the matchups that there's gonna be some back and forth in this series. So I expect a strong response from Tampa. They've won 18 in a row following a loss. We'll see if the Rangers can survive the storm early. No pun intended, but I expect Tampa to come out very strong in the first period of Game 2 and pepper Igor Shesterkin with a ton of shots. So as hopefully the Rangers can buckle down and take care of business early on in Game 2 because being able to hold home ice through the first 2 games would be critical for the Rangers to win this series. So Game 2 just as important in Game 1 in my opinion. So we'll see how that goes. But I definitely think this series is the more back and forth series. Well, we'll see back and forth between Colorado and Edmonton just because of the amount of goals being scored and the lack of defense. But in terms of competitive series where it's just going to be very close, I think overall, in terms of how the series plays out, I definitely think the Tampa Bay Rangers series is the place to be. So that's going to do it for me. I'm going to get out of here, but best of luck to everyone in the Millie Maker contest for the NBA tonight. And yeah, we'll keep things moving along as the playoffs continue. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.